The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, we have David Icke joining us. David is an English author and thought leader. He has written more than 20 books that have been translated into 11 different languages. David's work spans over the course of 30 years and is largely focused on helping people understand the true power they hold. His newest book, entitled The Answer, is available for purchase on davidicke.com. He will be doing a live stream 5-hour talk entitled The Answer, Saturday, September 19th, and you can sign up to attend the live stream at iconic.com. That's ICKONIC.com. I hope you enjoy this enlightening conversation with David Icke as much as I did. Well, thank you so much, David, for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today. It is an absolute honor to have you here. I can't believe you're here. Just last week, I was watching you at a rally on the 29th, which thousands of people showed up to. It wasn't reported that way, I don't think, but you were live there. So can you tell us about that experience?
Well, it was an amazing day. From what I understand, from what people have told me, the previous rally against lockdown and all the impositions that have come from that had a matter of hundreds there. But this one on Saturday had between 35 and 40,000 people.
That's amazing.
They came from all over the country in, specially arranged buses, and it was just an extraordinary day. And as I kind of stood there, I was in Trafalgar Square in London, and you looked out across the throng of people. It's like I said when I started. I'm looking across a island of sanity in a world of madness, and the energy was staggering.
I can imagine.
And then you look at the people that were there, and they were every racial background, every sexual background, to a large extent. It was across the income bracket background.
Right.
And all these fault lines down which we are normally divided and thus ruled were gone.
Yeah.
Because you had this massive people of all religions and no religions who were united in the demand and the desire for a world of freedom. And not a world of tyranny, which is, of course, unfolded so fast in the last few months. Yeah. It's all been there in the background, beavering away and operating under the radar, preparing for this time.
Right.
But now it's entered the room where we can see it, and people now struggle to deny that actually the world's not controlled by the forces that they thought it was.
Right.
But it was just an amazing day, and it was a completely peaceful rally, a peaceful atmosphere. There was no violence, and it was just a beautiful day. And just so often when it appears that the system, what I call the cult, the global cult, because that's what it is that's behind all this and so much else,
Right.
when um, they are projecting or delivering what appears to be their power and authority and control, what they're actually doing is confirming where the power really is. So you had 35,000 people there, and if
Yeah.
there'd have been a few hundred, then the police could have picked them off
Right.
because it was outside social distancing laws. It was, I mean, the number of people that's supposed to gather should not number more than 30, and there were 35,000, 40,000. So
Yeah.
we were a bit out there, but there's nothing the
Yeah.
police could do because there's just too many people.
Right.
And this is the numbers dynamic that gives the power to the population to end this whenever it chooses. Another
Right.
point about where the power really is, you know, I've been banned from YouTube and banned from Facebook and banned from everything you could
Yeah.
think of, actually.
Yep.
But but this force that has done that through these organizations that it controls, I mean, Silicon Valley is owned by this cult. They created it.
Yep.
Um, they seem to have the power. Oh, we're going to ban you. We're going to ban you. But hold on. They control the Silicon Valley. They control the mainstream media in general. They control the medical system through big pharma cartel. They control the banking and financial system. They control the governments
Hmm.
via their networks. They control the major corporations, and yet they are so frightened of a guy putting out information that challenges their narrative that they feel the need to ban me. Now, if they were really in their power and really as confident as they claim to be and as cocky as they claim to be, I wouldn't be a problem to them. Icke on
Right.
YouTube, oh, that, who cares? Look what we
Right.
control. I mean, oh no,
Right.
no problem. But I am a problem, and people like me are a problem, and programs like this are a problem for
Right.
a simple reason that um, the the narrative that we're being told to believe in, not just about this pandemic hoax, but about the world in general, is so tenuous, is so unsupportable by the evidence,
Right.
is so demolishable by the evidence that the only way that they can protect it, particularly this virus hoax, is to censor and silence or seek to silence those who are exposing it. So it's not that they are censoring because we've got the power to censor. You know, look how powerful we are. They have no choice because
Right.
without the censorship, their narrative will not survive because it's ludicrous. And I
Right.
think it's important, you know, when we look at current events and we look at situations around the world, which are just full blown fascism in places like Victoria and Australia currently,
Yeah.
that we don't fall into the trap, the mind trap, the mind spell that is cast upon the human population.
Hmm.
That the authorities have power, they don't. The
Right.
only power they have over us is the power we give to them. And if we take it back, it's over. And it's over the moment enough people choose to do that because it's our acquiescence to the illusion of their power,
Right.
which is driving the control. You know,
Right.
do this, okay?
Right.
Yes, sir. No, sir.
Can you?
That's it's that dynamic that allows the few to control the many. The
Yeah.
power of no. I will not acquiesce with my own enslavement. I will not acquiesce with the enslavement of my children and grandchildren. That power of no collectively is not just the power that will overturn all this,
Right.
it's the power that we've always had but have always given away. Look out through the whole entirety of human history, and it is a story of the few controlling the many because the many acquiesce to the few. It's just an ongoing, repeating feedback loop, and it needs to be broken, and it needs to be broken now. And the first stirring is just becoming visible.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about discrediting? I feel like you may be the godfather of being discredited. Your 30-year body of work and how relentlessly they've attacked you. And you covered the fact that, how dangerous it can be for someone to be speaking the truth and challenging the narrative. But I can see patterns in the way they discredit anybody that comes up against their narrative. Can you speak on that a little bit so people can better identify when someone's just undergoing a discrediting campaign?
Well, it's happening everywhere now.
Yeah,
I mean, when a group of doctors and medical professionals turn up at that press
the
briefing,
frontline doctors.
yeah, in
Yeah,
Washington D.C.,
yep,
and they are giving their own experience of what they have experienced with regard to this quote virus and its effect, and they're trashed
yeah.
by the media, then it's not because of what they're saying. I mean, what on earth do those excuses for journalists who reported that know about anything? I
Right,
worked in journalism for years,
right.
in newspapers, in radio, and in television with the BBC. And I tell you, it's ironic but true. Um, Two of the most clueless, uninformed, um, know nothings that I've ever come across in my life have been journalists and politicians. And they're the ones that should surely know more than most people. They know less. What you have now is a gathering number in the general population who know far, far more about the world than any mainstream journalist. And of course, it's a structure of imposition and acquiescence. That everywhere you look, it's a structure of imposition and acquiescence. And so you have the people that own the media who appoint the editors, and the
Right.
editors and their network within the media organization, they hire the journalists, and the journalists stay employed as long as they follow the line of the editor, and he stays employed, or she stays employed as long as he or she follows the line of the owner.
Right.
This is another pyramid of fear and imposition.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get a fair deal and a fair report from a mainstream media operation, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to promote and turn news into propaganda by pushing the line that the cult that owns the organization wants, and to uh, uh, silence, censor that which is exposing that narrative. And it's become over and over and over and over more and more blatant as these months recently have unfolded. And
Right.
so, and if you can't discredit the information
Bingo.
because it's too supportable by the facts, then what you do is you say what the person is not saying, so that people think that's crazy when you're not actually saying it,
Right.
or you literally attack the messenger
Right.
to
The
discredit
character of the
the
person.
message. Yeah, but the point is, as you rightly say, I've been through in my life in the last 30 years historic levels of ridicule and
Yeah.
abuse, but I'm still sitting here talking to you.
Yes.
I talked a couple of weeks ago to 35, 40,000 people And now, instead of laughing at me in the street, quite openly, people did years ago, now they're
Mm.
stopping me all the time, wanting to talk about the information in a serious way. So
Right.
the point being that we just have to speak our truth all the time. And if, in the early days, that it falls on stony ground, well,
Right.
so be it. And if people abuse you and ridicule you for it, well, so be it.
Right.
If we either have a commitment to the truth and uncovering what's happening, or we don't. And if you keep speaking your truth, if it has validity, then eventually it will be shown to be so. And suddenly people will say, hold on a minute, this bloke said that, she said that, he said that. I didn't know
Right.
that. But they won't be saying that
Right.
if you hadn't said it when you did, amid the ridicule and abuse. It's
Right.
no good coming out years later and saying, I knew this. Oh, you're just saying that.
Right.
You've got to say it at the time. And eventually you reap the reward of that in people saying, well, hold on a minute. There's too many things that have turned out to be right here. What the hell else is this guy saying? And that's the process that I'm going through now. And it's dreamland for me, because I'm talking to people with ears to hear instead of abuse to throw, as
Right.
it used to be. And I can cope with abuse from the media because I expect it.
Right.
And this is the other thing, you see, when you are um, doing what I do, it's not just about gathering information and communicating it. Of course, it's all about that. It's all about you. It's about your growth. It's about your awakening. You don't awaken and that's it. Oh, I'm awake now. No, it's a process. It's a
Yes.
process
Yep.
of um, of deleting and diluting all these mind programs that are imposed upon us from cradle to grave.
Right.
So you can start to see the wood for the trees.
Right.
And through the complexity or apparent complexity, you can see the simple truths of what's going on. Now, to do that, you have to also be going through a process of awakening yourself, and the point in my awakening that was pivotal was when I was subjected in 1991, particularly to a tidal wave of abuse that was almost too extreme to describe. But what it did, because life gives us our greatest gifts, often disguised as our worst nightmare,
Yeah.
and I can count them.
Yeah. I have
And
a few myself.
yeah, exactly. We all do.
Yep.
Uh, and it was the moment that I was subjected to that abuse, and the bubble burst. And that bubble was letting go of the fear of what other people think of me,
Oh my
and
gosh.
letting
Yeah.
go of the concern with what other people think of me. Because that is the prison that most people live in. You see it on social media all the time. This is what virtue signaling's all about.
Right.
It's about presenting a face which you think other people will like. And once you do that, when you're looking for um, feedback,
Right.
or what a good person, what a kind person, what an
Yep.
intelligent person, you're no longer you.
No, you're a
That's your
chameleon.
biology. You're no longer you. You are what someone else wants you to be. The
Yep.
unique you is gone.
Right.
And it's time now that we stand in. We are all points of attention within an infinite state of consciousness, but we are unique points of attention, and we should celebrate that uniqueness and
Right.
not have it bounced and intimidated into conformity, because
Yep.
that's what's happening. I keep hearing people say, we must have inclusivity. And the same people destroy inclusivity without
Right.
actually realizing that's what they are doing. And so it's vital now that people stand up and celebrate their individual uniqueness. And
Right.
something absolutely vital alongside that, we have to return to a state of self respect. You know, you look at all these things that are going on, whether it's the human caused climate change hoax, or whether it's the social distancing and the masks. What are they all saying? Humans are dangerous.
Right.
Humans are bad. Oh,
Dirty.
humans are horrible. And you should go into a state of self-loathing, which is um, uh, uh, reaching such an extreme, particularly within the climate change hoax, which is perpetrated by the same people behind the pandemic hoax, exactly the same
Yeah.
network. Um, they are going to the extreme of saying that humans should stop procreating so we die out because we're so horrible and so bad. And so you go into this state of self-loathing, and you start to lose self-respect. And you know, the control of humanity is all psychology. It's all psychology. Everything is focused on psychology, and it targets the subconscious mind to implant perceptual and belief systems. All the time that's happening. And given that, according to psychological research, 95% of human behavior is subconscious in its origin.
Right.
If you can control the subconscious, you can control, to a large extent, collective human behavior. And so, if you, for instance, look at the psychology in relation to self-respect currently, um, are those people that wear masks and do what they're told because they think, oh, they've got to be protected from the virus. How do you know that you need to be protected from the virus? Well, the government said, yeah, okay, fine. Um, but there are others who don't want to wear masks because they realize it's a nonsense, and they realize it's bad for their health. I mean, really bad for their health
Yeah.
cumulatively. But they still do it out of fear of the consequences.
Right.
Right.
And what that does, just look at the subconscious effect of that in deleted self-respect. You know it's bad. You know it's a scam, but you're still doing it, and self-respect starts to get deleted. And why I say self-respect is so vital now is it's self-respect that says, I will decide what I do, not some dark suit in government or some medical technocrat on the payroll of Bill Gates, which invariably they are.
Right. Who
I will.
isn't?
So here's part of how the psychology works. If the government or authority says you will do this, and you say, okay, let me have a look at what you're saying, and let me have a look at why you're saying it should happen.
Right.
I'm going to look for myself to see if it stands up. And if I think it stands up, and that there is a reason why you're doing this, and it's a good reason, then okay, I'll do that.
Right.
You're still in your own power. You are deciding.
Right.
Very different. You know, so much of what happens in the world in relation to authority is written off as stupid bureaucrats. Oh, the idiot bureaucrats! And my goodness me, there are some in among them, sure. But in the core of all this, it's there's method in the madness. So they tell the population that they have to conform to regulations and new laws in relation to this pandemic, for instance, where it's so obvious. And those regulations and laws are quite blatantly ridiculous, contradictory, and make no sense whatsoever. Now,
which is exactly what's happening right now.
exactly. But to the conscious mind, what is the conscious mind's reaction to that? If people don't realize what's going on, it is stupid government, stupid bureaucrats, what idiots.
They actually
Well,
think they're making flawed decisions, and that's
yeah,
the end of it.
but then you look at it from this point of view, going on from what I've just said. You are told to do things that are obviously to you ridiculous, contradictory, and make no sense, but you do them anyway. And what this is doing is deleting self-respect. And when self-respect is diluted, submission follows, because it's self-respect that will not submit.
Right.
And so what they're doing is deleting and deleting and deleting human self-respect, to the point where it becomes submission. And if you look at anything, especially what's been going on in the last few months and current events, there is a conscious reason for it. That's to keep the conscious mind happy. And there's a subconscious reason, which is the real reason. So if you look at masks, the conscious mind excuse is it protects you from the virus. Well, first of all, even if you believe in the virus, viral particles are minute, minuscule, and far smaller than the holes in masks.
Right.
And you are also breathing in your own carbon dioxide, which the body is trying to expel, and you're not breathing in enough oxygen. We have the outrageous situation in Ireland where some schools there have said they will have to have breathing breaks for the kids so that they can take masks off for a few minutes before going back into the classroom and putting them back on. So what that is an official acknowledgement that the kids wearing masks in schools are not taking in enough oxygen all day. So where's the self-respect of the parents that sends their kids to school to be in that situation, you see?
Yeah.
But the subconscious reason, that's the conscious reason. The subconscious reason are all to do with submission, subjugation, and also the deletion of individuality.
Yes.
I walk down the street, I live in a little town here, and you walk past people year after year after year. All right, mate, morning, how you doing?
Yeah.
And now you can't even recognize them
because they're masked up.
Masked on, and they all look the same. And it's a deletion of individuality. It's a deletion of human interaction, which so much is connected to facial expression, which you no longer see.
Yeah.
So these are the subconscious reasons why it's going on. And by the way, I've just had an email just before we started this from a friend of mine in America who was deeply in the MK Ultra mind control operation, which I've written extensively about. She was so deeply into it. She was put under mind control to do whatever people like presidents wanted her to do. I mean, they just turned her mind into a computer. Press enter, does what you want. And she was just saying how her daughter, who I met some years ago, quite a number of times, who was born into captivity, literally into captivity. Kathy O'Brien was.
Oh yeah, the Franklin cover-up.
Yeah, Well, that was part of it. Yeah, she wrote a book called Transformation of America, as a transformation of America, and that's exactly describing what's going on now.
Yeah,
because it's all psychology. She was held in captivity, literally, as under mind control to carry out various tasks.
Yeah.
Many of them horrific. But her daughter was born into captivity, and she's just been saying how, from the age of 2, as part of her mind control and developing her into a mind-controlled slave, literally, they made her daughter wear a mask from the age of 2. It's all mind control. It's all subjugation of self-respect and subjugation of individuality.
That's so
And
interesting because I myself can't wear one. I get very upset with it because I know it's wrong. So I complied in the very early stages of it when they were trying to flatten the curve and all of that. But then after more data and more realization, I literally cannot wear it without becoming really upset about it.
well, it's so obviously a symbol of control and subjugation. You know, it's like I've said many times, what this cult does is it pushes the gate, and if there's no resistance, it walks through the gate, and it
Right.
walks to the next gate, and if there's no resistance, it goes to the next gate, and each gate is the next stage and more extreme stage of human control.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be wearing masks. Now, well, I ain't wearing a mask. I'll go to prison first. But we wouldn't be wearing masks now as a human race if enough people at the start had said, we're not doing it. We're not
Right.
doing it. No, the power of no, not doing
Right.
it. How are they going to enforce it? Look at the number of places you're supposed to wear them. Look at the number of people who are supposed to wear them.
Right.
And then look at the number of people there is to enforce wearing them. It's
Right.
unenforceable.
Right.
The only way that it's enforceable is to get the population to enforce it on themselves by subjugating to it, and
Right.
also getting the population to enforce it on others by giving people a hard time for not acquiescing as they do. Yeah,
Right.
I've given my mind away. You should do so. That's what they're
That's
saying.
right.
Yeah. But I won't. I won't.
Yeah.
I've not worn a mask. I've not washed my hands in that toxic,
Hand
terrible
sanitizer.
toxic gunge they call sanitizer.
Mhm.
The Food and Drug Administration has announced 75 brands that are dangerous, can cause blindness or even death. Oh, yes, text me from the virus. And I won't give my name on details to this track and trace stuff. And I won't subjugate. I don't social distance either. If people want to dart away from me because they fear me, well, that's their choice. Dart away.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
free. But
Yeah.
I'm not darting away from you because I'm not frightened of you.
Right.
So, I live my life as I always have. And I'm sure at some point, me and the authorities will look each other in the eye. I think that's inevitable, as the plan is to impose, for instance, this mask wearing in more and more situations, not least anytime you leave your home. That's what they really want.
Right.
But whatever, I'm not doing it
Yeah.
because I will not concede my self respect to a bunch of bureaucratic, well, clueless bureaucrats,
Mhm.
and behind them, using the clueless bureaucrats as a vehicle, are the inner core of this cult that's driving all this,
Yeah.
and all these people. Just a quick story. I was watching a video today, and it was featuring an email from just a member of the public, and his child was due to go to school and wear a mask all day.
Yep.
He said it's not happening, right?
Good.
So he
Good
goes
for
to the
him.
school and he talks to a teacher and he says it's not happening. Oh, well, it's got to happen because it's where the rules. So they said, well, we'll get the head teacher to call you. So the head teacher calls him. Oh, it's the rules, And he said, well, what do you know about masks? What do you know about masks? How do you know what you know about masks? And she said, oh, well, it's the Department of Health and Department of Education. Yeah, the government, yeah. So here's some information about masks that they won't tell you. And, he said she went quiet, basically,
Yeah.
because she'd never heard this information before. This is what is happening. It's the psychopathic leading the blind to
Right.
impose upon the blind. That's what it is.
Right.
And those people who choose to have the self-respect to give them the opportunity to see they're the ones for which this is all so blatantly obvious what's going on.
Right.
But all the way through the system, it's programmed people programming other people.
And even they've really set the stage as far as individualism goes. And your work on individualism and how you speak about it really stood out to me because it's pretty systematic. You know, your kid is born and there's all these rules right away, and we just kind of fall into place. And then when your kid gets into school, then you really start to notice it. And we pulled our kids out of school 3 years ago
Hallelujah!
because of this very reason. I was fighting a battle upstream, and then I came to realize, oh, they don't want what I want. Our standards are completely different here. Their goal is completely different to what our goal is in raising our kids, which is to raise individuals to think for themselves. Every time our kids spoke out for themselves, they were hushed, not supported, right? And so we realized this is never going to be what we want it to be. This is never going to be. So we pulled them. And I watched the school system continue to squash individualism and push group think.
That's exactly what's going on. And guess who is one of the major funders of American education, not least this whole Common Core education? Bill Gates, the guy who's behind the what would be a lethal, cumulatively over period, lethal vaccine for the human race on many levels.
Oh yeah.
Not just health, but on many other levels too. So this guy's everywhere. I've just got a new book out called The Answer.
I have it. It's amazing.
85% of it, because I started it last October, 85% of it was written before the real pandemic really kicked in.
Yeah.
In the first 85% of it, I mean, how can I put it? Bill Gates' ears were burning because this guy's funding all these other things I'm writing.
It's unreal
And
how
then,
he's got his tentacles into everything.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that. It's how the cult works. So, yeah, education is, well, it's not education, it's programming. But that's been a fundamentally more extreme experience for children and young people in recent generations than it was for me. I was born in 1952.
Right.
Yes, the school system, which I completely, I just didn't even want to know. I mean, I went to school for the first time when I was a little kid, and it got to lunchtime, and I thought, I don't like this, and I went home. I went home on my own. I went home. I said, Mum, that school's horrible. I want to go down the shops with you like we always did before. Oh no, you got to go to school. So, but I went to school, and it basically passed me by. I was a rebel then. It wasn't I wasn't interested in things that I found interesting. It's just that
Right.
I didn't find it interesting. And I've always been a questioner of things.
Right.
So even then, there was a blueprint, yeah, for how you saw the world, but it wasn't even close to the extremes of perceptual programming for young people now and kids now.
It's so obvious.
Just unbelievable. And Gates has had a major role in this because the man's a psychopath, and he should be in jail for the rest of his life. In fact, he should reincarnate a number of times to complete the sentence for crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
So you have this perceptual program from the earliest age. I mean, the idea that you've just come into the world 3-4 years, that's all you've been here, and already, bang, you're in a class situation with a representative of the state telling you what to think, what to do, when you can be there, when you have to leave, when you can leave, when you can eat, when you can talk, all this stuff. The programming is there, and the programming is submission to authority. There are consequences for not submitting to authority from the earliest age in this system, and then you go through your formative years, going through this this fantastic mind control technique
Hmm.
called
Rewarding
repetition.
those who comply the most.
Yeah, exactly. Repetition, carrot and stick to mold the population that you want. If you go back, I put a couple of quotes in the answer, and I've written about this extensively in other books. But if you go back to the original creation of state education in America, it goes back to J.D. Rockefeller. He was behind
Shocking.
it. Yeah, J.D. Rockefeller was behind it. What else was J.D. Rockefeller behind? The creation of the pharmaceutical cartel
Yes.
and the
The
destruction of
1900s,
what was then mainstream medicine, what is now called alternative. So
which they completely discredited with the same pattern as they use today.
exactly. And who created the World Health Organization? The Rockefellers. Are the Rockefellers really close to, going way back? The
Hmm.
Gates family. In fact,
Right.
I've seen genealogy that claims that if you go back far enough, the Gates and Rockefeller families fuse.
Mm.
So now you have the biggest funder of the World Health Organization, created by the Rockefellers, is the
Right.
Rockefeller, closely associated Bill Gates. So it all connects in, and education programming is
Hmm.
vital, because if you want to turn out the adults that are going to submit both to your authority and to your version of reality, what I call the postage stamp consensus,
Hmm.
which is what's taught in the schools and universities, then you have to get them early. Because if
Yeah.
you don't, I mean, I met a couple of young girls who came over to see me one was the mum, and one was the friend, a friend who came with her, and they what would they be? I don't know, 11,
Hmm.
maybe 11, 12,
Sixth grade,
and and
grade
they
six.
they'd been to Steiner schools.
Mm.
Steiner schools, which one of their prime goals is to bring out individuality. And
Interesting.
these two kids were so bright, so intelligent for their age.
Hmm.
Um, when you compare them with anyone who's come from the state school system, which is merely nothing to do with education, it's just a program perception.
Yeah.
And so then you add in, of course, all the technological vehicles for programming with the smartphones and social media and all this other stuff. And we're looking at generations of young people who are the most perceptually targeted in human history. I feel for them. And it's up to parents. I mean, what you've done is fantastic. It's up to parents to step forward.
Right.
And
Again, that's a test as a parent for your individuality because it
yeah,
doesn't come without criticism when you're a homeschooler.
no, it doesn't. I mean, my oldest grandchildren, they don't go to school. They're homeschooled. My the young babies as they are with my two sons, they're not going to go into the state system because of respect for the children,
Yes.
respect for their right to grow up as unique individuals with their
Right.
own unique spin on life, their own
Right.
unique way of looking at life.
Right.
And we should be celebrating uniqueness, but we don't. And because the system doesn't want uniqueness, it wants uniformity. You look at any tyranny, I don't care what fancy name you give to it. I mean, people say, oh, is this fascism or communism? Do you think it makes anybody difference? They're just different names for tyranny. They're
Right.
different names for the same thing, basically. Control by the few of the many
Right.
in an institutional structured way. So when you look at this whole woke mentality, which is an outgrowth of the perceptual programming of the education system, funded and manipulated by people like Gates. This is a mentality that perceives itself as seeking inclusivity while destroying it. So it says that you must be inclusive with black people and with transgender people, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. And I'm all for that. I
Yeah.
mean, I have a simple philosophy on life, and it's this: do what you like, so long as you don't impose it on anyone else.
That's
And
right.
we can all get on with our uniqueness without being imposed upon by someone else's.
Right.
But the point is that it's not about inclusivity. It's inclusivity if it suits us, which is a fundamental expression of bias. So, um, you know, black people are oppressed. Okay. Well, actually, not all of them. I mean, I have noticed Michelle Obama. I have noticed Beyonce and Jay-Z. I have noticed them. I mean, don't let's get carried away with the one-stop shop for every group of people. But of course, there is oppression of black people, as there is
Right.
oppression of many other people. And so it's Black Lives Matter, which is just an organization absolutely funded and created by the 1% to create racial divide and rule of the target population.
Yep.
But then you see white people in when these riots are going on in places like Seattle and Portland.
Hmm.
And if there's a black police officer
I've seen
who's
this.
made the unique choice to want to become a police officer, the white people are abusing the black police officers
Yeah.
for being traitors
Right.
to their race. Um,
The
and
programming is deep.
it's like, do you want me to find a mirror? I mean, excuse me, you're abusing a black person and you're anti-racist. You're saying we shouldn't black people shouldn't be abused, but you're abusing a black police officer for being a police officer. But this is the thing about woke, and it all comes out of the programming of the education system. It is Orwell's 2+2=5.
Right.
And what we're seeing now
The
is
gaslighting.
a transformation among those that fall for it from 2+2=4 to 2+2=5. And the more, we're going back to what we talked about, the more you can get people to acquiesce and do ludicrous things that make no factual sense, the more you are perceptually moving them into 2+2=5.
Right.
And I would just say this to people: if someone had have said in February that what is happening now would be happening and the human race would accept it, what would you have said? You're bloody mad. That will never happen. We'd never allow that. And now, what do they call it? The new normal. The new
Right.
normal.
Ugh.
New normal is 2+2=5.
Right.
And this is why it's important, and why when I'm going about my life, when I see nonsense and ridiculous things, I point them out. And I
Same.
point them out not just for people around me, but for myself.
Yep.
To keep pointing out the nonsense, the idiocy, the contradictions. Because what you're doing is you're holding on to 2+2=4. Because once you it's the new normal. I know, this is how we do it now.
It's just easier to wear the mask.
Yeah, exactly. You're 2+2=5, and what is 2+2=5? By definition, it's a post-fact society, and that's where we're moving into. This is what the woke mentality is. It's a post-fact mentality, whereby you cannot even defend your position with solid gold facts as long as what you're saying doesn't suit the woke mentality. You have to be cancelled, silenced, and censored.
Right.
Well,
they've been trickling this in for quite some time then, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, you look at political correctness.
That's what I'm talking about. Exactly.
What is political correctness? It is manipulating the population to silence itself. That's what it's doing.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Stasi example in communist East Germany, they rallied the population to control the population and to report on the population. This is what's going on now.
Yeah.
It's a technique which you see repeated with all tyrannies, where the target population works on behalf of that which is targeting the target population, and so you're seeing more and more of this. These are the people screaming at people in the aisle because they haven't got
Right.
a message.
Or calling on people for
Yeah,
being in a
exactly.
park.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's you cannot be the few and control the many without the acquiescence of the many, the compliance of the many, and also the support of the many.
Right.
Every tyranny is done goes down the same road, and we're going down this one. Except this one is a global tyranny. Tyranny is going
Yeah.
global.
Yeah. I want to talk too about, we've talked about the education system and the programming and the push. I mean, when I was in school, college was barely mentioned, right? And that was just in the 80s and early 90s. It was mentioned, but it wasn't pushed. Once my kids got into school, they started talking about college in kindergarten. Push them along, right? The more important the message became as each grade went on, that college was necessary. But I also want to talk about food and health and how that's played into just setting the stage for this compliance.
Yeah, well, when when I was growing up in the 1950s and 60s, they were my that's my school period. I left school in 66, 67. College was hardly mentioned then, and I've seen it. This It's almost like this is how it is.
Yeah, it's
You're
expected.
born,
You're going to go to college.
yeah, you're born, you go to school, and then you go to college. But what this extension of the education system is all about, of course, is it lengthens the period of programming,
Right.
and therefore it becomes more and more effective. I left school at 15. You could in those days in this country, because I went off to become a professional footballer. I never took a major exam in my life, because of the time that I left school. Before the major exams kicked in. I've educated myself on my terms.
Right.
And one of the real effective ways, it seems to me, with home education or non-state education is the child's passion, what the child is interested in,
Hmm.
is something that they pursue, instead of going, oh, what period is it now? It's maths. Okay, when this is over, we walk down the corridor and it's another period, and and so it goes on all freaking day. I remember it at
Yeah.
school. It's like,
And how
I mean,
fast can we get through this? Literally
yeah,
wishing your time away.
yeah. And the thing is, we've got to get you to tell the system what it's told you to believe, because then you'll get your grades, and we'll get pats on the back for being a good school. It's all focused on this exams. Oh, and if you get your exams, you can go to college and all that stuff.
Right.
It's all nonsense, and it's devastating, generation after generation. So when I left school at 15, I educated myself as the years passed. And this system where a child follows their passion, does what gives them pleasure,
Hmm.
pursues the interests that they naturally have. Well, while you're doing that, um, and you're researching it, and all that goes with it, you're learning to write, you're learning to
Right.
read, you're learning numbers, instead of this, oh no, no, now it's maths, we're going to find out today what x equals. Oh really? Well, that'll change me bloody life, won't it? Hey,
Right. Because we use that every day.
I
I
couldn't
know
care
I
less.
do.
Oh, whatever you like it. I mean, make it equal whatever you like, whatever turns you on, but I'm not interested.
Right.
Right. So, but what you're doing with, interest-based education
Yep.
is you first of all, you've got the child's attention because they're doing something they like,
Right.
but then they're learning all this other stuff at the same time.
Yep.
I left school at 15, never took a major exam, and I've written about 30 books now,
Yeah.
because and what you do is you educate yourself. I mean, I've learned so much about so many other things while focusing, while researching this information. This is basically, I've been through 30 years of interest focused education. Uh,
Right.
and we can do this. We don't need uh, formal schooling to do this. Kids go to school far too early, and they spend far too much of their time there. But look at what's going on. The state has control of their attention,
Yeah.
and then when they leave at when the bell goes and the system says you can leave now, slave, but you must be
Right.
back in the morning or else. Then they go and do their own work. So
Right.
the school then keeps it going.
Oh,
Homework.
yeah.
And
And they've infiltrated food.
yeah, and this is the thing that um, we are a vibrational wave field of
Mhm.
information. That's what we are. This is a holographic projection of it. We call the body. And if you go into that level of frequency, then if you've got a balanced energetic field, vibrating energetic field, a consciousness, then you are healthy because you're in balance.
Right.
You don't have dis-ease.
Right.
And this is why emotion is a imbalanced emotion, low vibrational emotion, all around the base emotion of fear, is such a killer and such
Mhm.
a devastator of human health. Because when we feel these low vibrational emotions, they're basically like distorted frequency patterns.
Right.
And as we're projecting them, all these different levels of like hate and resentment and fear and
Guilt,
anxiety,
shame.
yeah, all these things, um, that vibrational pattern starts to impact and destabilize the energetic field that
Mhm.
is the body, and it starts to get disharmonious and becomes eased. And it's exactly the same principle with food and drink.
Mhm.
If you could see, in fact, years ago, I spent quite a bit of time with a very, very interesting man called Dr. Emoto in Japan.
Yeah.
And,
Did the
and he,
water study.
oh yes, and I went to his center in Tokyo where he did his work. He was a lovely man. We spent a weekend in London and, chatting, and it was recorded, and it was turned into a book in Japanese.
Oh,
And
wow.
I never read it, obviously. um, yeah, if I had done, I'd have read it the wrong way. But anyway, the what he was doing, for those that haven't come across it, and you go on the internet, you'll see
Yep.
illustrations of this. What he would do he got these little canisters of water, and he would put words on the side of them, like love,
Mhm.
appreciation, hate, I want to kill you, all these different statements
Mhm.
and other things. He put mobile phone on. He put, which I'm coming to. He put toxic water in there, whatever, and then he would freeze them very, very quickly, and then he would photograph the water crystals. And
Mm.
the difference was just staggering. It is such a revelation because, when we talk about different frequencies have different effects,
Yep.
um, but this was a way of putting those frequency effects in front of your eyes.
Right.
So you see the water crystals of water on the canister that have had words of love and appreciation, and they're beautiful. Um,
Mhm.
harmonious, geometrically beautiful images of these crystals. And then you see the crystals where the water has had I hate you, I want to kill you, or something like that on the side, and it's just a mess.
Yeah.
And that is reflecting the different frequencies. And people say, well, how can writing words on the side of a canister affect the water crystals? Well, because everything, literally everything in our reality is frequency. And it's frequencies interacting with frequencies. Every thought, every emotional state is of different frequency. And so we see the words love and appreciation, I hate you, I want to kill you, to the conscious mind. But actually, what they are statements that carry an intent. And that intent resonates to a particular frequency.
Right.
You know, the words, literally written words, are generating the frequency that represents what they say. And so these different frequencies are going through the water, which in its base form is, again, a waveform field of information. Mm-hmm. And they affect it and they change it. And so when the water is frozen and they photograph the crystals, they reflect the vibrational state of the water, which is impacted by the words on the side or whatever it is. So what Mr. Emoto did was, in some of the experiments, was put toxic water, toxic river water, all these different things. Mm-hmm. And then he would photograph the crystals, and they were a mess. Mm. So where I'm going with this in relation to the question is, when we consume toxic food, which is most of what you buy in the supermarket, they, because of its toxicity, and all the sodas and all the stuff that goes, because of its toxicity, it vibrates to a chaotic frequency. Mm-hmm. And we are introducing that into we seem to be consuming it because that's what is happening on the holographic level, if you like, that we call the physical world. But actually, we're introducing these chaotic frequencies into our own frequency field. And it starts to impact upon that, just as it does on the water in the canisters. And therefore, you start to become disharmonized, diseased, and it will play out in some form of what we call illness effect, either, quote, physical illness or psychological. So all around, and that brings us to 5G, it brings us to Wi-Fi, because what are they? Chaotic electromagnetic fields, and we're interacting with them all the time. So now we have a situation where kids are going to school, they're sitting in Wi-Fi infested atmosphere, as all schools are now, with masks on, not getting enough oxygen. I mean, it is systematic child abuse. But, you know, on the thing of food and health, what's missed, I think, by vast numbers of people is the power of the mind over bodily health. Yeah. Because I go into this in the answer in one chapter in some detail. Our state of consciousness, our state of mind, our state of emotion is generating different frequencies. And if those emotions are imbalanced and our thoughts are imbalanced, then we're generating those frequencies into the body field and we're disharmonizing it. But we can also harmonize it. And our thoughts and our perceptions can become our experience reality in the area of health as much as anywhere else, because the body is basically a projection of the mind, and therefore the mind is impacting upon the body more than anything else. This is what happens with the placebo effect, where people are given a sugar pill, thinking it's something that's going to make them well from what they're
Being
suffering from.
told. Yeah.
Uh, and their belief in the drug, which they're not actually taking, heals them.
Right.
And I've looked at articles and investigations by open-minded doctors over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them have said, they just wonder how much of the treatment is actually affecting the health of the person,
Yeah.
and how much the person's confidence in the treatment is affecting their health outcome.
Right.
There was a story I read a long time ago now of a guy who went through various drugs which he believed in, relating to a cancer he had, and the drugs, it turned out, in trials didn't work, but this guy believed they did because it was one of these experimental drugs, and his cancer disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And then he read in the newspaper that the trials that he was part of had turned out to be, not very, not very positive, and his cancer came back. And then the doctor said to him, "Actually, no, what's happened?" Because the doctor by this time had realised the game here. He said, "No. What you read about in the newspaper, that was another batch. It wasn't what you took. It was different. What you took was fine. The cancer went again." And that's an extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
But it came back again when he realised actually that the doctor had misled him.
Mm-hmm.
The cancer came back. He eventually died from it. But the point being, that's an extreme example, but it's an example of the power of the mind
Right.
to affect the body.
Right.
And
The belief system that we need something outside ourselves.
exactly. How many people? I read it some years ago. The figure was staggering. The percentage. How many people die within the predicted prognosis period
Oh,
that
yeah.
the doctor gives them?
You get 2
How
years.
long was that doctor? 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Because I read about this a lot at one point. Do you know there are examples of people who've been given a time to live by a doctor? They've died in the period the doctor said.
Yeah.
And then in the post-mortem, they were found not to have the fatal disease the doctor said they had.
Oh,
It was their mind that killed them. And if your mind can shut down your body in the
mm-hmm.
belief that that's inevitable, then your body can stop, your mind rather can stop your body shutting down.
Right.
You can think yourself alive as you can think yourself dead. And it's this power of the mind, for obvious reason. This cult doesn't want people to believe
Right.
or understand the power that they have in their own minds to
Right.
create their own reality. But it's this power that is so understated in relation to health. I mean, a personal experience, when I was 15, I left school at 15 to become a footballer, a professional footballer. And 6 months into my career, I started to get joint problems. And over a period of years, my career eventually finished at 21 with what they said was rheumatoid arthritis. The joints were picked off in a sequence that eventually led to I can't play football anymore. The doctor at the time, when I was 21, said something very nice. He said, "Well, getting it this early, you could be in a wheelchair in your 30s." So I thought, well, I'm not. And I was given this jar of pills. I remember it was called Indesid. I'm sure that was the name, Indesid. And I said to him, "Is this going to, take this away?" And no, just take the pain away. I said, "Well, yeah, but what will happen to my body?" I mean, even when I was 19, 20, when this all happened, I realized that,
that wasn't going to be helpful. It was a Band-Aid.
the drugs are very, very dangerous. I've always been a non-drug person
Yeah.
from quite an early age. But so I ditched the drugs, never took them, and I went about my life. And it progressed and it progressed and it progressed. And it reached the point at one point, this is during this period I've been doing all this research in the last 30 years, it reached the point where I was shuffling my feet along the ground.
Mm.
I remember I was at Heathrow Airport, and fortunately the floor was slippery. It wasn't a carpet. And I was literally shuffling my feet like that to move. I couldn't even walk properly. But I reached the point where I thought, hold on a minute. If what I'm saying about the power of the mind over the body and over health is true, then do it.
Right.
And I decided that I would use my mind. And it wasn't, I'm going to focus here, I'm going to heal,
Right.
I'm not knocking that, but that's not why I did it.
Yeah.
I just decided I was okay. I just decided I was healthy, and this was not going to affect my life. I just decided that.
Yeah.
And here I am. I'm now 68. My rheumatoid arthritis should now have me,
Crippled
in a
up.
real bad state.
Yeah.
And apart from a little bit of deformity in my right hand, which was seriously deformed at one time, I'm not affected by it at all. I'm in no pain. I'm not limited by it in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a time when the trains in Britain, if you're going to get into a carriage, the handle meant you had to grab it and then twist it and pull the door.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do that. I had to
Wow.
ask people to come and open the door for me, and I'm in my 40s, 50s at the time, and now not a problem, because I decided it wasn't going to be a problem.
Right.
And if we can just, because anyone can do it. I mean, my mind is my mind. Everyone's mind is their mind,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's body is their body, and that interaction is the same with everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
it's this.
Imagine somebody then having, you just said that, trying to tell you what to think.
Well, this is you've picked up here the real dynamic of control. It's ever so simple. And this cult knows, because this cult, why does this cult operate with secret societies and stuff? To keep
Mm-hmm.
secrets. And what is the biggest secret they want to keep from us? The nature of reality itself, and the nature of the true I itself. They don't want us to know that,
Right.
because we would become uncontrollable. They want us to self-identify with the labels they give us and we give ourselves. So we become, when we self-identify with the labels of man, woman, black, white, and all these sub-labels now, this endless bloody string of letters
Right.
for different labels. And, for me, you want to live your life like that? Well, live
Fine.
it.
Yeah.
Live it. Why do you have to define it so in such myopia? I am,
And pitch yourself up against others because you have that label.
which is the divide and rule that allows the few to control the many.
Right.
So if you self-identify with labels, you're self-identifying with limitation. When you self-identify with being the consciousness, the eternal infinite consciousness that's having the experience, and then a very brief experience called human, then you take on a totally different point of observing the world, and a
Yes.
point of identifying the I. You don't identify with limitation anymore. You identify with infinite possibility, having a brief experience. And you can take that infinite possibility and you can apply it to the brief experience, and the experience changes. Suddenly, you're not little me, I've got no power. You are as much power as you want to be, infused into that experience. And suddenly, your life changes. and
Right.
you see the world differently because you are seeing it from an expanded point of view instead of a myopic point of view, which is where the cult um, wants us to be. So um, the the control of humanity comes in isolating what I call five sense mind
Hmm.
from this expanded level of consciousness that we all are. Because once you're in an expanded state of consciousness, well, you're basically looking in and seeing all the connections, where in that state of consciousness, everything seems to be individual dots. From this point of observation, you see the patterns, you see the pictures made up of the dots, you see the connections. You can't be controlled when you're in this point, level of awareness. And this level of awareness will never concede its self-respect to a dark suit bureaucrat or a dark suit politician or anyone in authority. It just won't do it.
Right.
So they have to hold us in this isolated bubble, as I call it. And the idea is to detach the influence of expanded consciousness on the five sense mind and then program five sense mind through the systems of um, communication control that it has to have and the education system we've been talking about
Yep.
to have a certain perception, a myopic perception again that suits the agenda. So it doesn't want people, quote, waking up. It wants them
Right.
sleep. That's why the education system is simply structured to put them to sleep for the entire period of a human life. And this is the sequence: control information, again, education system, media. Information received forms perception, and perception dictates behavior. So by controlling information, you're controlling or programming perception among those that fall for it, which is most. And from perception, you're dictating behavior. All behavior comes from perception. People went into house arrest, vast numbers of them, because they had the perception that there was a dangerous virus.
Yep.
Um, perception equals behavior. And this the whole sequence is control information, program perception, dictate behavior. And if you do that en masse, you create human society, which is the subtotal of human behavior.
Right.
It's so simple the
It
way
is.
it works.
But when I talk to people, this is, we have conversations over time and slowly people start to, open their minds. But it always comes back to this: why? Well, why would they do that? You talk about the cult, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about who that is and then address this everlasting, but why? Why would they do that? Why would they do that?
Okay, well, why would a psychopath murder someone they've never met? Why would they do that?
We
Why would
can't
they
understand.
why would they see someone in the street and kill them just for the sake of it?
Hmm.
Why? Because they're psychopaths,
Yeah.
right? So um, we are dealing with a psychopathic mind that has an addiction to control and imposition.
Mm.
And,
And it goes back many, 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 many,
yeah,
many years.
where I'm going to go now is into something I've been writing about for years. And that's what I call the mind virus. But in the last month, I've I've been talking about this mind virus that basically possesses human consciousness and disconnects um, five sense mind from expanded consciousness. That's where it needs to get in to make that disconnection. And I've likened it to someone sitting at the keyboard and the mouse.
Okay.
and the computer. And the computer is symbolic of the five sense mind, and the person with the keyboard and the mouse is symbolic of expanded consciousness. Now, what's supposed to happen is those two are supposed to interact.
Yeah.
Um, but when they start interacting again, that's what we call awakening. But being asleep is when they don't interact, because the five sense mind is disconnected from the influence. And what happens when a computer virus takes over a computer is it infiltrates the computer system, symbolic of human perception. And the more control it gets, the more it's dictating what the computer does. And you're banging the keys and banging the mouse. Nothing's happening. The computer's not reacting because there's a virus that's taken over the control of the, quote, perceptions of the computer. And that is a profound, I think, symbolism of how humanity is controlled. Now, like I was saying, in the last month, having written about this virus, mind virus, for years, and wow, I say it works, I came across a Native American concept. The Cree talk about the Wetiko, and other Native American people have different names for it, some very similar to Wetiko, but it's the same principle. And then you find that other cultures around the world have the same basic concept. And Wetiko, they describe as a mind virus and a mind blindness. And what it does, it operates in the subconscious, because once the conscious becomes aware of it, it loses its impact. Its power is in operating at the level of the subconscious. So it's feeding perceptions into the conscious mind, at which point the conscious mind perceives that as their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own working it all out. Right. And the Native Americans talk about how this Wetiko creates a mind blindness for the conscious mind, while the conscious mind doesn't realize it's blind. And I've seen this over and over again in the last few months. People will say, oh, I think this is what's happening. And they will give it to you as if it's their opinion, as they've worked out what's happening in current events.
Yes.
But what comes out of their mouth is the official narrative, virtually word for word. So they're parroting the official narrative, which through repetition has come in through the subconscious mind,
right,
while thinking they've worked it out. This is the Native American concept of this Wetiko making the mind blind to events while thinking it's not blind.
Right.
And that dynamic you can see everywhere in relation to current events, where people are sure they've worked it out, but they're just parroting the official story. They haven't worked it out at all. They're just repeating it.
Yes.
But this is the point about Wetiko, which is a particular frequency, and it's a chaotic frequency. And what this mind virus does is invert everything. So if you look at society where this Wetiko is at work, I mean, these networks of the cult are completely and utterly expressions of Wetiko. That's why they are as they are. Extremes of Wetiko, that's psychopathy. Psychopaths are Wetikos, extreme Wetikos. And everything is inverted. So if you look at the world, it's all inverted. Mm-hmm. You bomb countries from the sky to protect them from violence. That's what they did in Libya. We're going to protect the Libyans from Gaddafi. What are you going to do? We're going to bomb them from the sky incessantly. That'll save them from violence. Everything's inverted. And this is Wetiko. But once you become aware of it, what you're doing is you're pulling the influence and acknowledging it with a conscious mind. This is why, if you're going to act in a certain way, if you just stop yourself for a second and you think, is this me,
Mm.
or is this mind virus? And often you'll say, nah, the me wouldn't really do this. This is a reaction of this virus. And the more that you become aware of it, the less and less influence that it has.
Right.
And a great way to symbolize this, in fact, it's more than symbolizing it, is, when you look at an image and it's got a subliminal insert in it. They do in
Mhm.
adverts all the time.
Yeah.
Because the subliminal, of course, below threshold, is below the threshold of the conscious mind. It's
Mhm.
speaking to the subconscious. And the idea is that in an advert, for instance, you look at the advert, and you just see what the conscious mind sees, but there's a subconscious implant going in.
Mhm.
And you can be walking down the supermarket aisle and suddenly react to a product that you never had before. Look at, why am I interested in this? Let's go over and see what this is. But it's been implanted.
Mm.
And that interaction brings out the subliminal implant.
Right.
But this is the point. When someone points out to the conscious mind the subliminal implant in a picture, every time you look at that picture again, every time, the implant you couldn't see before is the first thing you see. Every time.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
because the subconscious manipulation has become conscious and loses its power to manipulate. And this Wetiko, as the Cree call it, it operates in the same way. Once you become aware of it, it loses its power over you. And this this frequency, this mind program, which is what that is, if you fall into its frequency, it can attach to you. If you fall into low vibrational states, if you fall into hatred, if you fall
Mm.
into, um, you know, uh,
Victimization.
resentment, all these low vibrational emotions, you fall into fear.
Right.
You can connect, because all those things are distorted frequencies.
Mhm.
And if you fall into them, you can attach to this distorted frequency that the Cree call Wetiko, and I
Right.
call the mind virus, and it starts to impact upon you.
Mm.
And as you awaken and expand your awareness, as you expand your self identity, you are leaving the um, the frequency of Wetiko. You're leaving the disharmony of Wetiko.
Mhm.
And as a result, you start to think more clearly.
Yeah.
Why didn't I see this before? Well,
Mhm.
A, you were like that before. And secondly, you were in this state before, and now you're finding a harmony by going into other frequencies of perception that allow you to think and see clearly. Suddenly, God, it's so
Obvious.
clear, isn't it? Whereas before it wasn't. And all you've done is move into a level of perceptual awareness,
Mhm.
which is beyond the influence of this mind virus, which is not only the mentality, the perceptual processes of the cult, which is why it's so freaking evil. I mean, what is evil? My definition: evil is the absence of love. This Wetiko is the absence of love. It
Right.
doesn't have that capacity. Therefore, it does what it does, and it creates psychopathy and all these other things. Um, but we don't have to be influenced by it. But what they're trying to do is manipulate human society by manipulating human emotion because of the way they're making
Yes.
it happen in human society, that pulls us into these low vibrational states. Look at all the suicides
Yeah.
since this lockdown, and they want this to have this mind virus attached to more and more and more people.
Hmm.
So humanity becomes completely infected by it,
Yeah.
because COVID-19 is actually a mind virus. It's a virus of the mind. It's a
Hmm.
perceptual state which
Right.
people have been put into by all the propaganda about it since the turn of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think this is the key to coming out of it? Is this, I've heard people say this is an awakening period.
It's a wonderful opportunity, because it makes denial very, very much more difficult.
Hmm.
If you don't want to face something, then you can find a way of persuading yourself that it's not happening and what
Yeah.
is said is not true. And this is what I've faced for 30 years when I've been pointing out that this was coming and it was all being planned and in
Right.
detail about that. It's that basically, shut up, I don't want to hear it.
Hmm.
And and also, it can't be true.
Right.
And if I can persuade myself it can't be true, then I can not concern myself with the fact that it might be.
Right.
But what's happening since the turn of the year, particularly since the lockdowns kicked in, is that denial is very much more difficult because the extremism of authorities in position
Hmm.
has become so blatantly obvious. I mean, if you look at America, America is basically controlled now in the imposition of these rules and regulations of what I would say are
Yeah.
fascism by 50 people, the governors of the states. There's not, I mean, the parliamentary government and collective governments disappeared.
Hmm.
We're looking at dictators. In Australia, they've done exactly the same. The power has gone to
Yeah.
the premiers of the states. Yeah, and these impositions, these grotesque fascist impositions on the people of Victoria in Australia, are
Hmm.
coming from the Premier of Victoria,
Yeah.
Daniel Andrews, so uh, tiny numbers of people are dictating the lives of millions and millions I mean, hundreds of millions in America.
Hmm.
And when you're faced with that, you have got to go into serious levels of self-deception to
Right.
to
To
hold
justify it.
the denial that actually fascism is not unfolding in front of our eyes, which of course it is. And but what a lot of people have done, I found this in reaction to my own work, is they've actually got off the fence and they've said, actually, no, I can't deny this anymore. No, no,
Yeah.
no. This is happening, and the numbers have grown and grown and grown. The next thing is to get those numbers, not just to see it, but to stop acquiescing to it, to stop
Right.
engaging with it, because the power of no will bring this to an end as soon as enough people decide that that's what they're going to do. Because there's so few people that are deciding this, driving this, and enforcing it compared with the population. It's impossible for this to happen without the acquiescence and compliance of the population. So we have a choice.
Right.
Are we going to go on looking at it, moaning about it, saying it's, oh, I can see where this is going,
Hmm.
uh, and if we do nothing, it'll go there. It will.
Right.
Or okay, line in the sand. No more. We're not having it. No, no, not doing it. No, wear a mask. No, do this. No, stay in your home. No, and
Right.
then you'll see the world change. So it's a choice. It's like everything. What is life? Choice and consequence. Choice and consequence. Choice and consequence. And
Where do you see it going if people do that? The distrust in the government now is off the charts. I know in this country. I mean,
yeah, but you
uh,
see, when you study this, and again, when you're studying those who are doing it, it's also a study in psychology. Everything is a study in
we're in a
psychology.
psychological war. That's
Yeah.
what this is.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
We are. It's a war for human perception. But this is why I say being streetwise to how this works is very important, and crucial to that is knowing where they want to take us. Because
Yes.
once you know that, it opens the door to everything else, like how are we being taken there, and etc. So where they want to take us is into a global society controlled by artificial intelligence through technology
Yep.
and run by technocrats, bureaucrats, engineers, scientists, medical technocrats. We're seeing the technocracy take over now. In fact, Elon Musk, who is doing so much with his satellites and so many other things, Neuralink connecting the
Neuralink. Yeah.
computers, is
Connecting us to a cloud.
yeah, he is the grandson of a guy who ran the Technocracy Party of Canada in the 1930s. He's not doing what he's doing by accident. None of them are. Not Gates, not
Right.
Zuckerberg, not Bezos, any of them. But so they want to take us into a technocracy where all those people are running things, and a technocracy would have no more elected politicians. So at the same time, will be the end of what we call democracy. That's what technocracy is. It's basically a technological version of Marxism or fascism, whichever name you want to use it. So what they want to do at the same time that they are using politicians, most of them very, very unbright, and some of them in the know, key people in the know, they're using them not only to impose the agenda, but to completely demolish trust by the public in politicians.
To usher in a new way.
Believing them, right? When I was at that that rally with the 35,000 people a couple of weekends ago, when I spoken, the guy came over to me with a camera and he said, "I'm from the Economist." The Economist is a magazine which is connected to the Rothschilds and other people of the elite. And he said, "I want to talk to you about people losing trust in government." And I thought, I know exactly. You won't know this, the reporter, but I know exactly why the Economist wants to run an article about losing trust in government, because it wants people to lose trust in government. And this is what it is. And once you know the intricacies of the psychological game, to manipulate us to
act in a certain way, yeah.
And it becomes crystal clear why certain things are being done. But they do want to destroy our trust in governments, elected governments, so that we will be okay with having no more elected government. Well, they can't. No elected government can't be any worse than this lot. So what you do over the years is you bring in more and more clueless, clone-like, deeply unimpressive people into politics. My God, it's happened in this country. Gee, what? And because what you want is the end of belief in elected government, so you can delete it. It's all psychology,
right? So what people stand up? How do we take our power back in form and not be an anarchy?
Well, the world that we live in is a projection of the collective state of human perception. That's what it is. And as our perceptions change, the world that we create, will change in line with the perceptual change. So if you think, for instance, that you are little me, and you have billions of people in the world who think they are little me, I have no power,
Mhm.
then what happens is a few control everyone else. Because those that think they have no power actually give the power they do have to authority, thinking they have no power, but authority does,
Right.
which is only the people's power that's been handed over. It's kind of bizarre. It's
It is.
a conceptual thing.
Right.
Give us your power.
Mhm.
Okay, we've got your power, and we're going to now recycle it back against you through your acquiescence.
Mhm.
And you're going to therefore believe that we have the
The
power.
power.
And the only power we have is what you've just given to
Given
us
us.
through acquiescence, through obeying, through
Mhm.
compliance.
Mhm.
So you got all these little me people. I've got no power. What can I do?
Right.
And what they do, they give the power away. Power they don't even know they have, and it's called acquiescence. And then the few control the many. So that's why we have the society we do.
Yeah.
But as people expand into the true self, they remember the true I that they are, the consciousness that's having the experience. They are not the experience with all its limitations, all the labels. Then that level of I will no longer acquiesce. It won't. It will not hand over its self respect and its power because it knows where the power is
Right.
here. And thus, the few no longer have the power to recycle against the population because the population's no longer giving it away. At which point, we live in a totally different society.
Yeah. Almost
And
unimaginable.
yeah, and the point being that if we only think with a conscious mind, and we only think in terms of a physical world, which actually doesn't exist, it's holographic, illusory physical, then for things to change, oh, it's going to take so long. And if we're going to change, then we still have to have structure. So we've got to have a meeting, and someone's got, will you take the minutes, Ethel? Will you take the minutes? Yeah. And but no, that's not how the world will change. And it's certainly not the speed that it has to change or not change, because it's just a repetition of what went before. Once perception changes, what that perception creates will take care of itself.
Mm.
And, if we start to realize that we are all expressions of each other, we're all unique expressions of the same consciousness, and therefore we are each other,
Yeah.
and we put down these fault lines of division and who's going to get to the top of the greasy pole, who's going to get
Mhm.
more money than someone else, and then die, and it goes to
Yeah.
someone
With
else. You know what
what?
I mean? So, and we start to live a, in a consciousness state, a perceptual state of mutual respect. We have laws that say you can't murder because we've not reached that level of consciousness that wouldn't even consider taking another life.
Right.
We have laws that say you mustn't destroy the environment because we haven't reached a level of awareness where destroying the environment would never be contemplated. So all these kind of laws, a lot of them are there just to control us, of course, but
Right.
there are other laws that are simply there to protect people from our own state of consciousness. But when our state of consciousness expands beyond that, then the world changes, and the way the world is organized changes. And it can be symbiotic, it can be organic, it can just happen because we are creating a different reality. And this idea that we've got to go from one world to another, and we start again.
Mhm.
It can be organic as consciousness changes, because what is the world? It is a projection of collective human consciousness. What is a new world? A projection of a different type of human consciousness perception. Perception is all. This is why this cult, its first, second, and last target is human perception. Why? Because it knows that from that everything comes. We take our perceptions back, the world changes to reflect new perceptions. You want to live in a world of conflict and hate, then generate conflict and hate. That's the world you live in. You want to live in a world of love, peace, harmony, mutual respect, then love, be peaceful, and have mutual respect. And that's the world you live in. It's so simple. It's unbelievable. It's so simple. And, so often, almost in every area, the apparent complexity of life is a smokescreen to hide the stunningly crystal clear simplicity of how things work. Because all genius to me is not understanding complexity. Genius is seeing the simple hidden by complexity. And we live in a genius of a creation. And therefore, its prime foundation must be simple. And it is. But it seems to be complex. And that gets people to believe, oh, it's just too complex. Right. There's nothing we can do. It's just too much. It's not. It's dead simple. Change your perception, change your life. Change collective perception, change the world. It is that simple.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's exactly how I see it as well. It's like a tug of war. If everyone just lets go of the rope, what are they going to do?
Let go of the rope. Because, when you fight the system, you're making an electrical circuit. You are empowering it, and in this circuit, you are being caught in its circuit. And instead of resisting, just cease to comply. No. I'm not getting hold of the other end of your rope.
Right.
I'm not going to resist you. I'm not having a tug of war with you.
Right.
I'm just not taking part in your game.
Yes.
Over.
Yes. I think that's a wonderful place to wrap up. I want to be respectful of your time. This has been an amazing conversation, David. Thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.